Hey there, lady. My name is Molly Conley, and I'm devoted to helping women reinvent their love lives. Whether that's after divorce, dating on and off the apps, or in their committed relationship. Why? Because I've been there. I'm a former college athlete who filed for divorce 3 years into marriage, swam in the online dating pool into my late 30s, and now I'm married to the man of my spreadsheet dreams who I met 4 months before the world shut down. As a dating and relationship coach, I help my clients build a foundation filled with clarity, connection, and confidence, knowing Mr. Right is worth waiting for. Each week on the podcast, I'll bring you love life insights and savvy guests where you will receive the courage to release programmed limiting beliefs, discover patterns and behaviors restricting you from finding and attracting quality men, and ways to choose yourself first so you can build a foundation for a healthy relationship with yourself and a partner. Hey there, lady. Welcome back to Reinventing the Arena. We are so excited that today Brad is joining me for the 100th episode on the podcast.
From our new residence?
Yes. That's very important to mention because that's what we're going to talk about. So today we are sharing our experience about our rental house hunting, as well as like what it taught us about each other, our relationship, and what we want for our future. And what's great is that you're going to see some similarities between our experience and dating within the story.
Yes.
So, do you want to say anything before we get started? No? Okay.
I actually, yes, I would say looking for a rental house is like a combination of the worst parts of trying to buy a house and trying to rent an apartment.
Yeah. This was a very different experience for us
Yeah, we've both rented apartments and we've both purchased houses. But
eons ago.
this was different.
Yeah. So, and just a little backstory for this, like obviously if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, Brad and I met each other back in 2019. And before that, I was previously married and so was he. And at the time of those marriages, we both owned our own homes, and obviously have sold those. And I've been living in an apartment since 2011. So renting a home for me was going to be a really big step just in my life in general. And for you, what year did you recall was it?
2015, I moved out of my last house.
Yeah. So like this was not only a big huge step for our relationship, but this was a big step for us personally as individuals because back in the day, and I'm just going to speak for myself, I never knew if I was going to rent a home ever again. I never knew if I was going to purchase a home again because I really wasn't looking so far into that future. I feel like that's something that all of us kind of deal with is like trying to really think long term sometimes can be difficult in different areas of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought much about renting a house, but I kind of thought when I moved out of that last one, I mean, there's a lot of times where I thought, yeah, I'd probably never live in a house again, even.
Yeah. So
So,
this experience was super fun in the beginning. So we're gonna start back in January. So yeah, like right now it's April. So the one reason why we had to start looking early was because our apartment at the time gave us a 60-day notice, and so we just kind of started.
yeah, we were required to give 60 days notice.
Yeah, that's right, required to give it. And so what was fun at first was like, oh, we're going to get on Zillow and we're going to check all these houses out. This will be so easy. It's always been easy to find a place to live. And yeah, that really wasn't the case.
Well, it seemed like there was enough out there. I mean, we made the decision. They were also going to raise our rent significantly again.
Yeah.
And so we realized after looking at Zillow, we could get a rental house for less than the rent we're paying. Maybe there's some other expenses, but, we get a lot more.
Yeah. Like the quality of life
Yeah.
was going to be better for us.
Yes. So we decided we would definitely start looking.
Yeah. So basically, we kind of started making a quality list of what we would want in our rental house, whether that was like a 2-bed, 1-bath, or a 3-2, or if we could find a 2-2, which is not very common in St. Louis. But we basically started looking for houses every single weekend in February and even March. And so like we had to cancel plans even because some of these houses obviously that we had fallen in love with had, fallen through. Even like canceling a trip back to Omaha for like, spending time with family and for an event that I was going to be working with, a partner with. So it was more than we really thought would
Yeah, it
happen.
took up a lot of our life. We had to put a lot of stuff on hold and just concentrate on that because that was pretty much the most important thing that we needed to take care of. And it took a lot of work. It took a lot more work than we both thought it would.
Yeah. So even if you think about that with dating, I wonder for you, how much have you put your life on hold just to try to find someone else? As well as like, the things that you might have canceled plans with friends because all of a sudden a date comes up on your calendar. Like it's very similar with just even getting this started of looking for a home. But let's now that we kind of like set that up, let's talk about the houses that we kind of, well, most of the time I fell in love with them and you were the one like, let's just talk about that first one.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You talk about that one.
It was the first one we actually looked at. We'd been looking a lot on Zillow and had made a list and, kind of knew what we wanted or thought we did at the time. We spent a little bit of time talking about what we were looking for. We had been in a 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment for the last really 4 years, even back in Omaha. So we were kind of looking for that same arrangement. We each had our own bathroom, which has always been nice and pretty good convenience.
And a bathtub. I needed to have a
Yes, and
bathtub
a bath.
because I love those
Yeah,
sinks.
bathtub was a requirement. Um, so yeah, we finally went and looked at a house.
Actually, hold on. I'm going to have to interrupt you because this wasn't the first house we looked at. This was like the
I
first
don't even
few
remember.
weekends because we didn't find anything right off the bat that we were really interested in, or they were like off the market before we even applied.
Yeah, no, yeah, this is the first house we went to, right?
No,
Okay, I don't even remember.
that's how many we've looked at. So, I mean, actually, if we'll keep going.
This
Just
is the
sorry.
first house I remember.
This is okay. This is
Yeah,
our
it
first rejection.
had a nice little backyard with a hammock and a little shelter, and it had a weird
Mhm.
little um open attic space with a nook
Oh yeah, the
above the
reading
living room,
nook
a
book
reading
area.
nook.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, this was gonna be so cool.
Um,
Right
I
above it.
that's when I realized houses don't have big closets, and the kitchen was pretty decent, and but overall, it was kind of small. It was obviously older, but I think this one was maybe only 1940s or 50s,
Yeah,
fully
and
remodeled.
yeah, and like the basement was so much bigger than I expected because there
Yeah,
was like half of it was finished, and then you'd walk through this small door, and it's like so much more storage. An extra bathroom that actually wasn't listed
right.
because it wasn't like really
Yeah,
too
but
much of a bathroom. Um,
had a shower.
it had a shower though that maybe I can't. Oh, but we were thinking about like how wonderful like the garage was going to be. It was like a two-car garage, which
Yes, the
actually was
garage was nice.
so.
It was big.
For those that don't live in St. Louis, garages are, unless you live
Yeah,
further out
in the city.
in
Yeah.
the city of St. Louis, they're not normal to have around here. But what was good for this home that I really liked it, and we usually like either named it after like the street that it was on or the location. And so this house wasn't in the prime location that we were looking for, but I could visualize us like living there. I could see myself like climbing up to this little reading nook every once in a while. I could see us making breakfast. I could see how we would utilize the backyard and working out maybe in the garage because it would actually have a lot more overhead space than the basement did. There's just little things like that that I could see us and the potential of the home. But it really just looked good on paper. It was within the budget. The location was better, obviously, for Brad's work because your work is farther outside the city. And it was actually closer to some of the gyms and like to my swim team locations. And
Yeah.
so I wasn't thinking about how it just looked good on paper, as well as like, oh, this is really great. This house has all this opportunity for us. And so we went and looked at a few more houses that day, and we just kind of casually sat around and we were contacted by the owner if we wanted to apply. And so we did. And within a few days, we received, I think it was 3 days, like maybe the
Yeah.
Tuesday. So that was a Saturday night. And on Tuesday, we received notification that we didn't get it. Brad, how about you talk about that part?
Yeah, he said we were wondering why. This is the first time we actually submitted an application.
Not through Zillow either.
Oh yeah, so it wasn't through Zillow. So it was separate. So we just thought it'd be helpful to get some clarity on if there's any reasons, what the reasons were why we weren't selected, because we obviously were very good candidates, we felt. So I reached out and asked, was it this or was it that? And he said, no, actually, you're great candidates. It was just a matter of timing. And
Oh, of
our
like when we
take,
were gonna move in.
yeah, our take on that was the date we put down to move in, which was still 2 weeks before we had to be out of our place. And what we thought he was looking for at the time, based on the way he was talking when we were there,
Mhm.
but apparently, we came in second place. So that was pretty frustrating, because I had first walked away from that house like not super thrilled, but like after talking about it and you kind of putting perspective on it, I realized, oh, it actually could be a pretty good place. So I was pretty upset that we did not get that, because I felt at that time we had made a mistake, and that's why we didn't get it. That
Yeah,
it was something
ditto.
kind of in our control. We should have just put in a certain date and then negotiated. Or we assumed, we made some assumptions. We assumed that he was going to pick the best candidate and then say, "Oh, well, are you interested in moving in earlier, or can we work something out?" Or we just didn't know
Yeah.
the process, or what their thought process was. We kind of just assumed, for whatever reasons, and we found out, well, okay, well, that assumption is wrong.
Right. And so like this is what's even crazier. So we had our lease, just to get a little bit more back information, was up April 7th. And we obviously, like I said, had to give 60 days notice if we wanted to stay or leave that apartment. When we were looking and we were applying for this home we're talking about, this was February.
Yeah,
And if we put in that our move-in date would be like St. Patrick's Day weekend.
yeah,
And we're like, this is gonna work for us. It's like we'll be able to put down a deposit, like half a month's deposit. We'll be able to still put down the first month. Like everything's great. And so we were so confused after, obviously, like you said, what he had communicated to us made it sound like we were still going to be this good candidate. And once again, you bring up assumptions. And this was really hard because we took this person, what he communicated, as face value. And, there's no harm, no foul in it, because obviously everything worked out the way it did. But once again, it's kind of the same thing with dating. Like there can be a lot of assumptions just based off the communication that you have on a date or via text or whatnot. So
yeah.
very interesting. But we will keep going to discuss even the other ones that we had next. So this one was located in the exact part of St. Louis that we wanted to live. It was a walkable community, pretty much within restaurants, and pretty much restaurants is like our thing. Not bars and as much anymore, but like within an area that we thought was just fit us a lot better. We even kind of drove around in this area at one point, and noticed like people are outside running. There's a lot of more of community aspect. People are walking their dogs. It seemed like a very safe neighborhood. So we were thrilled to see that this duplex came available. And Brett, how about you just go on your opinion of the
Well,
place?
at that time, we were still, I guess, considering duplexes. This was a top floor, bottom floor, and this person had remodeled the entire building. They were just finishing up the bottom floor.
Which I actually now
Yeah.
know in St. Louis is called a flat, which is
Okay.
different than what yeah, keep going.
So not, yeah, not us. We're calling them both duplexes. I guess duplexes side by side,
Or townhome. Like they're
or townhome.
also
Yeah.
weirdly called things differently where you live.
So she had a
So
building that had two apartments in it. Bottom one was 3 bedroom, 2 bath.
mm,
Upper one was two
two bed,
bedroom,
one bed.
2 bed, 1 bath. Kind of small areas, but she had put a lot of nice details in there. Very nice, kind of updated finishes. The colors she used
Mm.
were very nice, and I got started getting kind of excited about it. I'm like, okay, but there was a backyard and a garage. They were going to charge extra for the garage, and she said, well, the tenants can get to decide how you share the backyard and the garage. And I thought that was kind of weird, but um, and the oven was actually a smaller oven that
Oh
didn't even
yeah.
fit. I looked at it and I said, this seems a little short. And I said, oh, this doesn't
Small.
even small. Yeah, not wide enough to fit a normal cookie sheet in. So that was kind of different. I'm like, well, okay, and so we were thinking about it, and we did end up telling her that we were interested
The 3-2.
in the 3-2 on the first floor. And then she came back and said, well, I had showed it to people the day before, which we knew she had showed it, and she said they applied, so I have to give them priority. And there's another assumption we had, is like, okay, well, we thought you were looking for the best candidate just because they submitted their application first. You don't you don't have to do anything. You're the
Right.
owner.
And she also told us when we were walking through it that other people have seen it, but she's not taking first come, first serve. She was doing the best applicant,
Right.
which is what other people told us as well. But one thing that was really the issue with the oven is very important to us. We cook a lot. I probably
Yeah.
don't show this, but like we do food prep, we do meal prep on Sundays. It's a big part of our relationship. So the frustration if we would have had this place
Yeah. The
would have
kitchen was
been
small,
it
or
was unique. I mean, that's the thing. Like the nice updates, the colors, the uniqueness really had us excited. Like even on the
yeah,
second floor,
yeah.
she had expanded the dining room area and it had a what like an inset what would you call that fireplace, right?
Oh yeah, just a yeah. It was
An electric
electric
fireplace
fireplace.
and it had LED lights. It had all these things and bells and whistles and I was just like this is interesting cuz all I gave a fuck about was that there was windows all the way around and I was like is this actually going like I'm a windows person for numerous reasons. But I couldn't tell if they were new or not and then we talked about the heat,
It
how
wasn't.
it
Yeah, it was outside the heated and cooled space. So that's why there was a fireplace there, because you couldn't possibly be in there in the winter.
right, but then think how hot it
And
would
it
be
was
there
going to
in
be
the
extremely hot during
summer
the summer. There was no air conditioning
or
anywhere near
or a
there.
ceiling fan.
Right, no ceiling fans. So pretty
So like
poor decision.
but regardless, like she had made all these updates that were more design friendly versus that would be for a good home. But
Correct.
we
Right.
didn't think about that until afterwards when she was trying to negotiate with us. How about you talk about that part? Or do you want me?
Well, like I said, that she told us she has to give the other people priority since they got their application in first, and they wanted the first floor, and asked us if we were still interested in the second floor, and we said no. And she came back with, "Well, I'll talk to them again to see if they can see if there's any possibility of them taking the second floor." And that just really put a bad taste in our mouth, because we're like, well, if I put ourselves in the other tenant's shoes,
Yeah.
that'd be really weird. We already said we wanted this. Why would you come back and try to convince us to do something that we didn't want? We made our decision. So that gave us that we had a really bad feeling about that landlord, and probably agreed we wouldn't want to rent from them anyway.
Well, and so here's the other funny thing is that when we sent this over, she hadn't even looked at our application
Which
yet.
yeah, we found it the next day.
When you have an application you submit through Zillow, you pay one-time flat fee for up to 30 days, which is nicer than some of these other ones where you have to pay additional. But it also gives you a notification when they open it. And she didn't open it till the next day. So guess what she did? Because she came back to me and said, hey, I have other properties that are coming available. How about I send them to you? And I said, sure. And so, of course, these are like double, if not triple, the rent
Yeah,
that she was currently offering at other locations. And I was like, oh yeah, we're not interested in that. We have a different budget of what we want to spend
right.
on. So it was definitely a good moment, but the reason why I kind of bring this up is like the updates and all the nice colors. It's like how when you go out on a date or you see someone within an app or you meet them at a bar and they just you're are you falling for a pretty or handsome face that doesn't have everything there long term? Do they have the communication style? Do they have like the work ethic that you're looking for? Are they desired like the same sort of living style that you're looking for? Like, do you want to live in the city? Do they want to live in the country? Do you want to travel? Do they want to be homebodies? Like all these little things still really add up in the long run for wanting to have something long term and knowing that we would sign a lease. Like we even told her that we would sign a lease for 2 years. And that's the type of commitment we were looking for.
Yeah.
But then we had, we got back back home and started doing more research and trying for more places. And Brad actually was like out of town at the time. And I don't remember, was it me or you that just saw this one place? I
I
think it
had
was
seen it. We
me.
saw You saw it. You sent it to me first. I had just seen it. Or I was on Zillow too. 'Cause, yeah, I was out of town in my hotel room.
Yeah, it was like 8 o'clock at night or something. I
Yeah.
sent it over to him. And I think even was it that night or was the next morning that we're like, we're ready for an application.
I remember now. You sent it to me, and I looked, and I said I hadn't looked at it. I looked at it. And I said, "This is it." So let's. We were both. I requested an application. You requested a tour.
Yeah, that's how we kind of like started tag teaming
We were
that.
the first. We saw on Zillow. We were the first or second to contact
No,
them.
we both, because so since we had separate accounts, that's
Yeah.
how we had to work that.
Yeah. So we knew we had a good jump on it.
I didn't hear back until, like, obviously I was in bed. Like, it was late night when I got that notification, so I responded in the morning. And he said 2 p.m. on Friday. And you had already um messaged him back and forth, and then I let him know that we were together because our
Yeah.
last names are different or whatever. So he sent over the application process. This was not the Zillow thing. This is something that we had to like sit down and really go through. And this was probably the most, other than another one, was the most intense sort of application process.
Right. But back up, like we received it while I was driving home
Oh
from out of town.
yes, you were driving.
So we couldn't do it right away. We did it later that evening, about 4 hours after we got the email.
Yeah, and so, but like there was stuff that I was like, well, I don't know what I need for this. Like some of this stuff I don't have,
They
like
were asking for a lot of
tax
income
information,
proof.
bank information, an employment letter that Brad
Yeah.
needed. Like all these things were like, are you sure that they need this? And so by the time we got done filling it out, it was like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And we sent it off. Was great. That was like Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Waited 2 days. Show up at Rosa, which that's the house. Loved it.
We were the first people to see it.
Yes, first people to
And
walk into
although
it,
he was showing multiple people at the same time,
which was
but
not
we,
communicated.
right.
So like when we arrived, like here's the cool thing. It was like in the neighborhood that we really wanted. Some of the great features were
It's a huge master closet, which is actually technically an addition they made and onto the master bedroom, and they turned it into a closet at some point with
oh
a
yeah,
bunch of built-ins.
and it had a French door.
Yeah, and
Oh,
great room for your office up front. Pretty decent space, living and dining areas.
the basement was
Basement was
huge.
completely full basement, huge, clean. Pretty decent kitchen with newer appliances, gas stove, which we were looking for. Great backyard with a large concrete patio and grass and
Yeah, I mean
fenced.
we didn't want it to be too big, so that it was manageable for us,
Yeah.
and a nice out front porch.
And one of the craziest things was the rent was way below market for what was going on around there. We didn't
Oh
really know
yeah,
why, but it was exciting to think about how much money we'd be saving with that place.
yeah, with like what we would do with it. So like we said, we were like the first couple in the house, and our strategy was to be like the last couple out of viewing the house. But I didn't follow that strategy. Like we went up and we both were just so excited. We really were like, this is it. This is the last place. This has to be our place. And Brad and I both asked some questions before we left. Like the guy even like looked at Brad's credit score before we left.
Yeah, he looked up the application, looked at that, said, "Oh," he made a joke about it. Applying.
Freaked me out.
It was better. It was better than normal. He said, "Yeah, I need to. I usually make phone calls to the employer, and I'll talk to the owner." So we thought that was a positive sign. We didn't really ask any other follow up questions.
Yeah, we didn't. We were like asking if he would take a check right on spot though.
Yeah.
And he had to wait. So there were still like two other couples there. And so we kind of just said screw it, and we rushed out to the car and we were going to wait. And I was just feeling weird because Brad's like, well, we should just go back in. I was like, ugh, no, I don't really want to. Like, that just seems odd. But we went home. We were really visualizing like us living in that space and how great it's going to be and all that. But the listing then came down that night. So we thought we would be contacted soon, but we had to wait days before Brad decided to contact the property manager. So we were on our way to like viewing another home that we really had been just kind of like sitting on. It was a backup, just in case. But the owner had to reschedule because there were some things within the house that she needed to fix. And so this, it's finally ready to show. And when we visited, it was it was a complete disaster. Like there was a hole in the ceiling. There was like,
They were digging up the backyard to put a new drain in because they
yeah,
just had the basement flood. And she said, and I was kind of thinking, why is she even showing this before the stuff was done?
yeah, it was bad.
And it looked way better on the photos online and in person. There was just a lot more problems with that one than we'd seen in other ones. And we were just trying to be polite and get through it. But the thing was, I was coming from work and Molly was coming from home, and we were meeting there.
Oh no, I was actually coming from a meeting. That's what it was.
We were driving separately to the place, and on the way there, I got the email response from property manager for Rosa saying that they gave it to the other couple that applied first,
Mhm.
implying we were second. And so I was extremely upset. I got to the house. Molly was running late. I got to the house like 10 minutes before her, started looking at it, talking to the woman, realizing as soon as I got out of the car, this was not our backup. No way, no how. And Molly got there and was very polite. And I was thinking, I hope she's on the same page as me. And I was trying not to telegraph that we had not gotten the other house. That I didn't want to say anything until we had left. But I was very upset.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find out until we got 30 minutes back to the apartment because that's how far away it was,
Yeah.
um, about how we lost Rosa, and it was a really, like, emotional process when that happened because it's like we had found what we thought was perfect for us, and it was devastating, to be honest. It was so heartbreaking, and
Yeah.
that was the beginning of March. Like, we still had 4 weeks, and it felt
Yeah.
like we were so I was so stressed.
So we had lost Rosa
Two other houses.
realized, well, yeah, we had lost some houses, lost Rosa, and realized our quote unquote backup was not
Yeah.
even possible. So now we're like at zero.
Yeah, so, and I mean, like, if I went back through, like, we had been keeping all this information in a spreadsheet, like, I love spreadsheets here. Um, and when I looked at it with what we viewed, what we asked for a tour, all that, like, even just looking online, we had over 50 houses, apartments, duplex, whatever you wanna call it, that we went and viewed in person
Yeah.
over from January 25th to the end of this. And so it was so tough to have what we thought was so perfect be taken away from us in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, and we ended up canceling next thing that we had coming up. I had a swim meet that I was going to go to, canceled that. Then with the trip to Omaha, we canceled that. And so then Brad, you ended up doing something that I was like, "Okay, I'm so for this for you to do," because I couldn't emotionally even go there at the time.
Yeah. Well, we canceled. We were supposed to be out of town that weekend, but we decided to cancel the plans because we thought we need to use this weekend,
Oh, yeah,
to house hunt for sure. Because then the following weekend was going to be St. Patrick's Day, and that was going to be a hard weekend to do. But anyway, we didn't want to take time off from the process. Now we were hoping to get it done before we left. And so I volunteered to go back to the neighborhood we wanted to live and just drive up and down the streets just to see if there was things with a little for rent sign that weren't listed on Zillow, because we did see a couple of those in one neighborhood.
yeah.
So that's what inspired me to say, okay, well, why not at least try this? So I spent between 2 and 3 hours driving up and down every street in that neighborhood, and it didn't see anything. There's a couple apartments, but nothing remotely close to what we would consider. But it also reinforced to me that, wow, this is I would like to be in this neighborhood,
Mhm.
just from what I was seeing, and um, so
Yeah,
it,
and I was sending you even
oh
like, "Oh,
yeah,
there's a listing over here, like, it's just this way or that way," and so then you would go drive after you were done driving through that neighborhood, you'd go drive in these and you'd be like, "Yeah, this is not where we wanna live. We don't wanna
right,
live this direction. We don't wanna
yeah,
live here." And so, that one thing too that I know I didn't even think about saying this, but, like, there was a pattern with how houses got listed on Zillow, and usually nothing was listed the first few days of the beginning of the month, and it was always something that would happen the 2nd week of the month, and how March fell, that really was like, "Okay, we were supposed to be leaving for Omaha on the 7th or the 8th, and, the 10th was a Sunday, and so we were like, "Okay, there's gonna be homes the 8th, 9th, and 10th for us to look at," and there was nothing.
yeah,
And that was the weekend that you drove, and we were in a panic because we're like, "We have to have this figured out soon," because there was so many people being like, "Well, what are you gonna do if you don't have a house?" And it was really starting to bring that stress, upon us. So we just went and saw, I don't know, maybe a house or 2, or drove by few places together, and I was like, "Oh, that house was okay," and I could just see on Brad's face that, like, he was still thinking of Rosa. And so
Well, there was no way not to compare everything else after that to that house. So that was our, you know, quote unquote dream, or that would have worked perfectly for us. So everything after that was already, starting behind the eight ball by being compared to that house. And I was stuck in that for sure. I was totally stuck.
so this is when coaching is a great opportunity in a relationship. So, I started realizing only at this point of the process how much like effort and energy and emotional roller coaster we had been on with finding the house and being like, "Oh my god, this is just like dating. Like this fucking sucks." Like that's how I felt. Reminding myself of like this is why I hated online dating. And so we started having this conversation in the car and I was like, how you're falling for a house is similar for falling for a person after the first date. Like you start dreaming of all the moments to come in the house, just like you start envisioning how a relationship might be with a person, right? Like you start to put this fantasy, this idea in your head of how the outcome could be. And, sometimes when people are like, oh, yeah, you're using visualization to manifest, I'm like, yeah, kind of. That's part of it. But that's a whole nother side topic. But it's more about how we're living in a fantasy world when we haven't even gotten the yes yet, right? So it was extremely heartbreaking when we were not selected for the home, just like when the person that you thought that something was going to work out with, it didn't happen. So I had asked Brad, like, think of a person before me that you thought it was going to work out with. And we started talking and having that discussion. And I'm like, this is the same thing. Like, you need to break up with Rosa.
Yeah, that honestly, that analogy like really hit home because I realized that's exactly what it felt like. Like I had, uh, it was like the girl I went on one date with, and I thought it went great, but then got ghosted. And like I literally had a specific person in mind, an instance in mind of that happening, and I remembered how I felt like mentally and like literally physically after that experience and what I was going through in my mind and like the scenarios I'd play over and over and all the what if situations.
Should haves.
Should have done this, should have done that. Should have said this, shouldn't have said that. Just analyzing the whole date and then, just wondering, well, what didn't she like or whatever, and I kept dwelling on it so much. And I realized, yeah, that's exactly how I was thinking of this house.
Mhm.
And so it kind of made me laugh a little bit, but I realized, yeah, she's totally right. So to jump, this was before I went driving around the streets. And so when I got back, I told her I drove by Rosa and I broke up with her. And I stopped in front of the house and said some stuff to myself, and I felt a lot better about it. I realized it just wasn't, meant to be, and we'll just have to move on. And um, that helped a lot. So, but it's funny. It made me laugh at first, like how spot on that analogy was, because I was just so obsessed with it, and it wasn't getting me anywhere. It wasn't a positive experience. It was just making me feel worse. So,
Yeah.
once I accepted that and moved on, that really helped.
Yeah, and, like, I love how you were able to come up with a solution on your own with when I'm like, "You're still gonna have to break up with Rosa," and you found a way to do it on your own way your own terms, and, when you did get home, you were in such a better mood, to be
Yeah,
honest,
even though
that
I
day,
hadn't found anything. Yeah, even though I hadn't found anything, I was definitely feeling better.
and I was still, like, sad,
Yeah.
but we were fine, to be honest. But, like, there were so many times, like, even just discussing Rosa and that property manager, like, he was really nice
Yeah.
afterwards. Like, we asked him some very direct questions. He answered those for us. Like, you could tell we were really upset. He tried to find us another home, like, that he had with listed and with his properties.
Yeah.
But we realized that we were constantly either being ghosted, or left unread on things, which was infuriating when we were getting closer to our deadline. And going back to like what people were saying to us, like we had the apartment complex contact us and say, do you have your address for your new home? And I said no. And they're like, what are you going to do if you don't find a home? And like they just started like putting these things into my head and making me like get so much panic. And Brad didn't really see it at the time because I'm usually pretty good at hiding it until it overwhelms me. But I would stand firm in the idea that we are going to have a home and we are going to find it and we're going to figure this out by the time we have our deadline. We are just going to make it happen. And so I was just really firm with turning down other people's suggestions, which I did have friends that don't even live in this state that were like, you could live with my family. And I'm like, no, thank you. Or I would be like, that's nice. You can talk to them. But I was very firm in my own belief that that wouldn't be what we needed. Um, there was other friends that were like, "Hey, have you seen this house?" And I'm like, "Yes, I've seen this house. We viewed this house. Here's what's wrong with it. Like it looks great on this, but it's not." Like affirming like we have looked at everything and we're basically looking for help from friends, even a realtor friend trying to find information for us online, like having to really think outside the box um so that we could find a place for us. And going quickly back to the realtor friend, she mentioned, which was so much more validating and helpful in this process, to know that it wasn't us, like that we didn't suck as people, like that we weren't bad candidates, because she was just like, there's people out there that are not willing to buy a home right now because of the interest rate. And so there are people that are like us that still want to live in a home. And so that is why the renting home market is insanely competitive, because it's very similar to buying a home.
Yeah.
Apartments, not so much. So that actually was very helpful with moving forward. So we came up with a new strategy of how like we were going to do this, because Brad had to go out of town for work again. You were in Atlanta for like 2 or 3 days, 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days.
And so I just was like, I kind of had my attitude, and, I was just like, you're going to have to deal with it with me looking at the home and saying yes for both of us. Like, do you trust me? And you're like, yep. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have to be that firm, but like, yes, I know that now that Brad trusts me enough that I can make the decision for both of us.
Yeah.
Um,
So the day before I had to leave.
I am doing my normal morning routine, and I'm just getting done meditating and journaling, and I'm just like, okay, now I'm gonna look for houses, and I'm within this app. There's nothing showing up, and Brad and I are talking back and forth. I think we were sending like, okay, what's some places that we are okay with viewing and
Yeah, and we had
dealing
already
with?
set up at this point, we had set up notifications, so we with a specific search criteria, so we would get
Yes,
emails. I even have my watch buzz, when we got an email notification from Zillow on something new. So we were like, because we knew at this point we had to jump on it right away. We had to be first on the next thing.
yeah. So I went back into a meditation for like 5 minutes or less, come back, getting back into Zillow, talking to Brad, looked at a home that we'd looked at a few times, and I was like, well, whatever, we'll go check it out. And I was trying to set up an appointment with this person. And I get out of the message, and all of a sudden, there is just a dot. No email coming up, nothing listed as new, but I just see a dot. And I'm like, oh, I'll click on that. This doesn't have any photos on the listing. It has a similar close location to the neighborhood that we're looking for, but its description sounded fantastic. And I go ahead and instantly share to Brad and I say, apply. That's it. I have
Mhm.
nothing else to say to him. Nothing. And I reach out to the person and say, can we schedule a viewing? Like, when can we get a tour? Blah, 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 blah.
And I'm at work and I get the message and I look at it and like, okay, yeah, totally see potential there. And I want to see some photos, but they had been putting up photos slowly. And then there was also a link to their actual property management company. So I went and looked at those photos and I was like, oh my God, this is great.
And
It's
I
three
hadn't seen
bedroom.
those
Yeah.
yet.
And she hadn't even seen them. 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 story, pretty updated, very unique, a lot more character than most of the older stuff we've been looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, 1906 house, but it, completely updated, you know, a really nice looking to me. And so,
A cute backyard with
yeah,
like
a
a
garage,
garage, and then like a covered area that was like a
carport.
carport, but could also be used for like entertainment purposes.
Yeah. I mean, it had, pretty much everything we were looking for. And right in our budget or below our budget. I mean, right in our range. So
Yeah.
I started the application process. It said you have to request to apply. So I requested to apply, received a reply. I said, yes, I meet all those criteria. Went to their website. I'm emailing the woman as I'm applying. online. And I said, Molly, you have to apply too. So we got on the phone, and I'm at work and she's at home, and we're talking to each other, filling out the form online. Thank God, not nearly as complicated as the Rosa one, but it still wasn't a Zillow one. So we had to do it
It was like 30, 40
separately.
minutes still
Yeah, it still took, but we knew we had to do it. And so I was frantically typing in everything. I already had all the information I needed
from
at
Rosa.
hand because we had prepared it for the Rosa. So all the documents, income stuff I had. So got that submitted. And we submit our application. Um, and it looked, from what we could tell, that we were the first to apply.
Yeah. And like, so I had been messaging her back and forth and being like, hey, that's my husband and whatnot. I'm like, both of us need to apply. We're both asking questions. And she said, and I said, so when can we come by a tour? She's like, I either have 8 a.m. tomorrow or 3 p.m. And I was like, if anybody knows, I'm a turtle in the morning. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going at 8. And I know it's going to be a 30 to 40-minute drive into the city for this with traffic, but I don't care. And so I'm like, I'll be there at 8 a.m.
Yeah. And I had to leave for Atlanta the next morning. So I was pretty confident at the time with the application. I was like, I think we can do this. I said, okay, I'm leaving a check.
Yep.
Take this check with you in case we need to put a deposit down.
Yeah. And so the next morning, it's bright and sunny, beautiful, which is why this is so important to me. I show up, she's there, she lets me in, and she walks into the kitchen and she goes, "You are so lucky." And I was like, What? Like, what's going on?" And I'm like, just trying to take in the gorgeous amount of natural light that's coming in through the windows, the height of the ceiling, the natural color, um, of the floor, like it's bamboo floor in this room, anyways. And then it's like gray, like just how much comfort and how much I enjoyed this setting already. And what are you talking about? And she's like, you guys were on it. You guys were the first to apply. And if you want it, it's yours. And I was like, oh. And in my head, I'm like, well, I haven't even like looked at the whole place. And she's basically like, this is your place. And as she continues to talk to me, she's like, I have been getting phone calls, emails, text messages all the way through the night. She goes, even then this morning, people are asking about it. And I was like, oh, that's a little crazy. What was great is that, I'm like, okay, that's fantastic, but can you show me the rest of the place? So we went and we did a walkthrough, saw the rest of the house, and then we had like a chat outside. And as we were chatting outside, she just brought up something personal about coaching. And so I started talking to her about that. And she and I just had like this really fun connection. And I was like, oh, that's great. And so I went ahead and signed a deposit and left and basically said to Brad, we got a place. And
She said I could come see it Friday. She was not, so
yes.
put the deposit down, so they'll hold it for a few days. Won't show it anymore. They took the listing down. She said I could come Friday morning and look at it together when I was back in town. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
Um, but while I was working in Atlanta, the day after you saw it, I think I was still looking on Zillow or getting notifications, and I got a notification from this house that was kind of in that neighborhood, but a little farther away. But just like I looked at the listing, it's like, oh my god, I have to apply for this because there's just like the finishes and the space and the look of the house and the backyard. It had a huge deck. We hadn't even looked at a house with a deck, really, not many. And there's like all this kind of brand new stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm going to apply. And then I applied. I was the first one to apply. And actually, the landlord called me and asked if I wanted to set up a time to see it. And I'm like, well, might as well do that. We'll do that Saturday. This is Thursday. And I texted Molly. And like, well, look at this. And she had a response that I won't repeat. And obviously, she was not happy because I was just.
No, the response was, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes. Because I don't know. It was like, oh my god, this house might be a little bit better than than another one. I think it was because it was closer in look and feel to the Rosa house, is what it really was. It was one of those almost exact style of houses. And I was like, well, it might be worth it just to see, this maybe this is supposed to be our house, and so we talked later that night. I set up the appointment to see it, and she was willing to go see it. I thought it was a good idea. But we talked later that night, and she brought up some things about it that I didn't really think about, and like while the kitchen was kind of updated, the cabinets were still old style, and the color was
No, it was just
wood,
the
and
it was the layout of the
the
kitchen of not
layout.
it was more
Yeah.
about the layout. It wasn't about the
Okay.
colors and stuff. It was more about how is that kitchen going to function for us long term.
There was no island. Yeah, there was barely any counter space, no
Yeah.
island, no prep area. And then, there's a couple other things. I'm like, yeah, and it was still
No dogs.
farther away than we wanted to be. And yes, they initially said no dogs. Then he was willing to bend on that. But I finally realized it was just me getting distracted by this shiny new listing, like back to the girl analogy. It was kind of a girl who looked good from a distance that I really felt that I better try to get
A
to
Mona
know.
Lisa if you know
Yeah,
Clueless.
exactly. And I was it was when I was leaving Atlanta, like in the airport, and like just talking myself through this and realizing this house doesn't really meet criteria. It had some nice shiny features, but it wasn't as solidly all around a good place as the one Molly had looked at. And so even though I had spent some time on the phone with the landlord and I was going back and forth with him, and he's like, "Well, I could allow dogs. We'll charge you pet rent." I'm like, okay, well, that's one step closer, but I just knew that, and I wasn't even going to tell Molly that I had that conversation because I was like, no, I'm going to take that information and like realize that this is not a place I want. So I texted him. I said, you know what, thank you, but we did find a place I think will fit our needs better. And that was like right before I got on the plane, and I felt totally at ease with that. So that's when I knew that I had just my distraction was over. I was calm again, and set myself straight, and I felt good about it. I was relaxed. I said I'm going to go look at this place, and 99% chance this is going to be our place. So just a little panic episode I had, um and just had to do some work through some things on my own to realize what I was doing, and why I was doing it. And it was just completely that. It was panic. It was like, oh, this might be better. you know I didn't want to miss out on this. So
And what's great though is that you had that own awareness on your own versus having to tell me that you worked on it. Like you mean you talked to me about it after the fact of you working through it, but that's how this whole process works with everything is realizing and getting the clarity about what we wanted and seeing that this was like because I saw it in person obviously before you I was like this is a suitable home for us. This is has what we want and more, which I mean we didn't want it. We didn't even think we were going to find a 3 bedroom, right?
right.
And now the
uh,
3 bedroom is perfect because now we have a second office for Brad.
Yeah,
So
I was
it's
gonna be
really
working
working out.
on the kitchen table like I
Yeah.
was like when I would choose to work at home, and now yeah, I have a full office. We have plenty of storage. The basement was a lot smaller and not a full basement like the other places were,
Yeah.
but all of our stuff fit in there. She was a little bit worried. She even said, "Well, it's kind of small," but when I got there, I said, "No, this is totally gonna be fine," and it was. But yeah, the third bedroom, having the two bathrooms, um,
The
the great
backyard.
kitchen, like black granite countertops, white cabinets.
Yeah.
Yeah, the backyard with the garage, the carport.
I mean, for us, like one of the things when I owned a home previously, I used to have girl nights and I would have all my girls come over and it would be a Saturday night and it was bring your own appetizer or food and bring your own beverage and we would just sit around and get to talk and you know hang out with each other and I haven't had something since because trying to do that in an apartment just doesn't work.
Yeah,
And so being able to do this here, like we're going to have a housewarming party and I'm so excited that we actually have the option to do something outside, to do something inside. And it's been fun. It's only been 2 weeks, but like we have been doing things that other people, obviously the people before here that rented this home, probably were not homeowners and they just have rented a home or they didn't care to do things. Like we have contacted the property manager a few times and she has been so helpful with
yeah,
some of the things that are like need to be fixed. And Brad has this amazing talent of being an engineer and experience that like things that other people don't about homes that you already told them, hey, this might be a problem in the future. We're not going to say anything about it, but just letting you know that if you rent this out, this could be a problem for you.
right.
So overall, this has just been an amazing experience and allowing us to really have these lessons and sharing them with you because even though we told you the chronological story and have had these little things to like align with dating, There were some things that we've learned about ourselves and about our relationship. So, some things that I realized early on, even though we've been together for 4 years, married and everything, I assumed that we would want the exact same things. But that wasn't true, and we had to talk about them, and learn from each other, and you've already brought them up, and that was some of those things like, I actually am used to living in older homes. My first home was a home from 1960, 1950, while living in Omaha, and you've always lived in newer homes.
Yeah, I've bought 2, and they're both just recently built. They were brand new, so I never even had to deal with
No
anything that had to do with an old home at all.
like, no closet space.
Right.
When I'm in a place that's older, I can creatively see, "Oh, well, we could just build this, or we could just put this here, or we could turn things this way and make it work."
We looked at some small
Ugh,
bathrooms,
yeah.
like the ones like going back to that, flat with that landlord, the little tiny little bathroom and the tiny little sink she had to install.
Yeah, like, I'm so glad we didn't get that place because there was
Yeah,
no way I could even have hand like, hand soap. There was no room
right.
for that.
Yeah, nothing yeah, it was
Nothing. I don't
yeah.
even know how I would do my hair, like, if I wanted to curl my hair, there's no way. But, I had to prepare myself each time that sorry, honey, but, like, that you would hate the home. And so, I had to remind myself that I didn't wanna talk to him about it afterwards. I would rather us go see all the homes we had set up for the day and then get home and talk about it. Um, and that was just because, like, he would say, "Oh, this sucks," or "I didn't really like this about it," and it'd be something else that I really loved about it. So I had to get used to realizing his previous experience and his perspective on things, not just because of where he's lived, but also like what you do for a living, and hasn't had the experience of like getting creative, right? So that was kind of the benefit of like why we didn't get Rosa because it didn't really move us out of, our own personal bubble, didn't allow us to have growth.
Yeah, I thought about that, once we got this house secured, I realized, yeah, that I told you, like, that I real when actually, it was after we'd gone through IKEA, I think, and
Yes.
all those things about you can get they make all these things for small spaces and what you can do with space, and I realized, like, yeah, I mean, the Rosa house would have been too easy. It wouldn't have forced any personal growth to learn how to do this stuff, and I thought, "Okay, this is gonna be good for me," like, being slightly uncomfortable up front about the amount of space because I always thought, space is so important. You gotta have enough space for all your stuff, and so that's what was important to me where you were just like didn't think as much about it because
Hmm.
you knew you could get creative and you knew they made products to help out and it had that experience before and I hadn't. So I said, you know what, this is gonna be good for me to go through this and learn how to live a little smaller, a little simpler, get creative. I can, people live in these houses, obviously, so
Yeah.
I can do it too. I mean, it sounds kind of stupid now, but it's like obviously people live in these houses that have small closets or don't have closets or have this and that small basement. And it's fine. We're in here now, fully unpacked almost, and it's totally fine. I mean, the basement's great. Everything's great. We got some stuff from IKEA. We're gonna get some more
Yes.
stuff from IKEA.
IKEA is our favorite.
So yeah, and I learned that even though there's several things that I caught with my home inspector, some of it's been helpful to get things done, and some of it's like, you know what, that's not a big deal because we're not buying this house. I wouldn't purchase this house per se on given the choice, but to rent it's great. So very happy with how things turned out.
Well, yeah, and like we can make any house a home. That is something it's very similar to thinking about it in a relationship. Technically, you can make any relationship, quote unquote, work, but work for you and for your lifetime vision and everything. It's different. You have to have the awareness and the acceptance of like where you are in your journey of like right now we understand that we're renting, we're not buying, just like you were
Yeah.
talking about, and how that really does allow us a different perspective on how we're approaching this and living in this home.
Yeah, because to your point of making it a home, I think I realized after a while we were on different pages because I was looking for a nice space. I was looking for a good structure, nice finishes, and plenty of space. A nice place, like a physically, good looking, nice place that didn't have cracks in the wall or weird paint or um, just things a lot
Nails
of
left in the
nails, like just things
wall.
that old houses have. And it took us talking a little bit in the middle of the process to realize we're not looking for a space, we're looking for a home. We can do a lot with whatever we choose to make our home. Um, so I just kind of had to change my view of what we were looking for. We weren't looking for a nice house. We were looking for some place that we could create a home in.
Yeah, we weren't looking for perfect. Like, we weren't looking for one of those celebrity built home sort of things. Like, I'm, and yes, you want character and whatnot. What I love also about this, the homeowner and property manager, is that we are allowed to do some things to make this our own. Like,
Yeah,
we got approved for making a garden or putting things out in the front yard and like planting our own flowers,
painting,
painting.
wallpaper.
Well, painting would be touch ups, but like, putting up our own wallpaper, that like the peel and stick stuff, like that all got approved um, right there on the spot. So we have ways to make this still our own space. Another thing is like how this process is going to help us in our future, as well as like how has it brought us closer together. So, like we said, we didn't think that we would be able to rent a home at this point, but this whole process of like how we started, what we were looking for, really learning how to communicate, seeing each other's perspectives and experiences, really is allowing us that the time when the time is right for us to buy a home, we're going to have like a whole leg up on that process,
Oh yeah,
that it's going to be a lot smoother, and we're going to be able to start earlier. We're not going to feel forced. Like, it's going to be a completely, even if hypothetically we're tied on a timeline, it's going to be so much easier for us to accomplish together.
yeah,
It did also uncover some of the stories that we were telling ourselves of how things should be. And we were able to work through them together, like we mentioned before, how Brad worked on some things by himself, things that I have mentioned and I had to work through too. And then the conversations we had around, you know, the space of things, but also like how other people started getting involved. That really became a problem for me. Some of my fears and judgments of like, you know, what would my family think of us living here or this location? That was something that did come up in every once in a while for us, but realizing they don't really have a say, and
yeah,
knowing that
definitely.
this is just what we want for us.
So you kind of alluded to it, like the future. How's this going to help us in the future? And the things I thought of, is taking the time up front in the process to make things more efficient. Taking the time to discuss, our expectations, what each of us want. I mean, we kind of did that in the beginning, and then we kind of kept adjusting it and kind of like, okay, no, we really need to talk about. Once we realized we weren't on the same page
Yeah.
after Shrewsbury, we're like, no, we need to talk about what we're looking for because it's two different things, and we need to understand where the other person's coming from and find out what's most important. On your spreadsheet, you had what are our must-haves for each of us, like bathtub. It was on
Yeah.
yours. We wanted
And this
yard,
one has a
and
nice bathtub.
yes, and that I mean, once we finally did that, like put that down, like okay, well that eliminates flats or duplexes or this type of
Yeah.
house or that type of house. We're not going to share a backyard. We're going to hold out for what we want, and so that did help a lot. So I think in the future, doing that more upfront, makes a lot more sense. And that helps you not consider things that don't fit in your criteria because we looked at several in the first half
Ugh,
of the process that we shouldn't even really considered. Some of
no.
those were those duplexes. Some of them were old. Some of them were neighborhoods we didn't really want to live in. Some we knew online were like, oh, it doesn't look great, but we better go look at it. Cause
Because it's the only thing available.
yeah, because we thought we were just going to we needed to have something, but later on in the process, we had set up some appointments. We're like, no, we're going to cancel that one. And no, does it make, you'd ask me, does it really make sense to see this tomorrow? And I'd say, no, let's just cancel.
Well, even like the one before this house, there was one that was set up and it was all really brand new. But it was right off of a busy street,
Yeah.
and it had no driveway. And I was trying to convince Brad, like, this is still going to work for us. This has everything that you want. Like, it's perfect for like we were looking for.
Except you couldn't have people over because there was nowhere to park because it wasn't
Yeah.
a street you could park on. It was a main street. There was no driveway.
There was no way to get across the street if they parked across the street.
Right.
like a,
You literally could not
yeah,
have people over, and it'd be hard enough to be there yourself. It was a little bit of a weird deal, and it was not really in a neighborhood. It was kind of by itself. So
yeah.
I was really skeptical. And anyway, we were able to say no. This is not going to work.
Yeah. So yeah, like seeing each other's perspectives was really helpful. And going forward, we will have this experience to help us next time. The only thing I have to add with that is that, one thing that we did say that we both were going to do when we found our house was that we were going to delete the app.
Yes,
And you thought it was going to be me that wasn't going to delete the app, that was going to keep looking. And it ended up being
kind of,
you.
because I later, yeah, toward the end of the process, I was thinking about that. Like, yeah, once I said, once we make a decision, we have to not look again, because I'm the type of person that would definitely look again and be like, oh crap, we could have had this one, could have had that one. So once we did get this and sign the lease, we did both delete the app. I think pretty much in the same day or two,
Yeah.
and I didn't have any problem with it. And I didn't go back on the website. I didn't go back.
I
We
haven't
stopped
gone back
emails.
since.
Yeah, we stopped our alerts, stopped emails. I have not looked at anything since we signed the lease, so I'm actually pretty proud of that.
Yeah, and you know what? This is kind of very similar. I remember when I closed my Match account, and I told you and I forwarded you the email. I was like, "I'm done. I'm in it to win it with you, babe."
Yeah, I do remember that. I think I was like, how did you even close it? I don't even know how.
Which
But I think
that's
I
another
did.
thing. When you have found a secure relationship, just taking it here, and you want to have that person know that you are committed to them, this is when you send them that forward email like, "Hey, I just got out of my Hinge, Bumble, whatever the fuck Tinder account that you're in.
Yeah,
Say, I've closed my account. It's been deleted. They can't repurpose it. They can't bot it. They can't do anything with it. It's gone." The other way to do that is you go through and you delete all your stuff first too, and then tell them to delete the account.
yeah.
So yeah. Thank you for listening to our house story and hearing how it really does cross over into the dating world and how this has impacted each of us as well as our relationship. And I would love to hear your thoughts about it, because if you were on my email list, you have been getting some updates about the home, or you might have seen on Instagram sometimes on our stories about like this whole process of what we've been doing. So, yeah, send me a DM, or you can join my email list by going to my website, reinventingthearena.com, and scrolling down to the bottom and joining my Lady Love Lessons. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Brad, anything else that you'd want to bring up?
We are excited to continue our couch conversations in our new home.
Yeah. Thank you, honey. I'm so happy. Thank you for joining me for the 100th episode. And ladies, enjoy the rest of your day. Can't stop settling? Sign up to receive daily words of wisdom. I call them Lady Love Lessons. They're for ambitious women like yourself who are tired of hearing they're too much or that they're not enough. It'll help give you the tough love and motivation to choose yourself first. All you have to do is go to my website, reinventingthearena.com, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage to sign up. I'll see you in your inbox.